You two picked the wrong park today. Officer Ryan Keller said it like a verdict, not a warning, his voice carrying across the quiet stretch of Jefferson Park where joggers slowed down. Parents glanced over from the playground, and a little league practice continued less than 100 yards away, as if nothing unusual was happening. Marcus Reed sat perfectly still on the weathered wooden bench, his hands resting where Keller could see them, while Darius Cole remained beside him with the same calm expression he had worn since the officer first approached. Keller looked from one man to the other, waiting for nervousness, excuses, maybe anger, something he could recognize and use, but neither man gave him any of it. That seemed to irritate him even more. "Stand up," Keller ordered. Marcus raised his eyes slowly. "Officer, what exactly are we being detained for?" It was a simple question, asked without attitude, without volume, without even a trace of disrespect, but Keller's jaw tightened as though Marcus had challenged his authority in front of the whole park. "I said stand up." Darius glanced toward the parking lot for less than a second, so quickly most people would never have noticed, but Marcus noticed. He knew exactly what Darius had seen. A silver SUV had just turned onto the far access road and was moving slowly toward the row of spaces near the tennis courts. Their timing could not have been worse. For almost 40 minutes, Marcus and Darius had sat on that bench looking like two ordinary men passing an afternoon in the park, and that was exactly how it was supposed to look. No suits, no visible badges, no government vehicles, nothing that would make anyone give them a second thought. Yet Keller had given them more than a second thought. He had looked at them, decided something was wrong, and built the rest of the story in his head before asking either man a meaningful question. Now several people had stopped to watch. Marcus could hear the faint electronic chirp of a phone recording nearby. He could hear Keller's police radio murmuring against his shoulder. He could hear children laughing in the distance. Ordinary sounds. Peaceful sounds. And somehow, in the middle of all of it, the situation had become anything but ordinary. Keller reached for his handcuffs. Darius finally spoke. "You sure you want to do that?" Keller gave him a thin smile. "I'm very sure." Marcus looked at Darius, and for the briefest moment something passed between them, a silent conversation built from years of training and trust. "Don't react. Don't break cover. Not yet." Keller stepped closer. "On your feet." Marcus stood slowly. Then Darius followed. Neither resisted. Neither raised his voice. Imagine standing in a public park knowing you have done nothing wrong, knowing you can explain everything with one piece of identification, and still choosing silence because the truth you carry is bigger than the humiliation of the moment. That was the choice Marcus was making. Keller had no idea. To him, they were simply two black men who had been sitting on a park bench too long, asking too many questions, refusing to look nervous enough. The first handcuff clicked shut around Marcus's wrist. A woman nearby whispered, "What did they do?" No one answered. Keller reached for Marcus's other hand. Then a vibration came from Marcus's jacket pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. Keller paused. "What's that?" Marcus said nothing. Keller carefully pulled the phone halfway from the pocket and looked at the illuminated screen. 2 words appeared beneath an incoming encrypted call. "FBI command." Keller stared at it for a moment, then looked back at Marcus. Marcus met his eyes with a calmness that suddenly felt very different. "Actually, officer," he said quietly, "you picked the wrong bench." 26 minutes earlier, Jefferson Park had looked almost too ordinary to hold a secret. The afternoon sun filtered through tall oak trees, laying broken patches of light across the walking paths while bicycles rolled past, dogs tugged at leashes, and the smell of grilled hot dogs drifted from a food cart near the fountain. Marcus Reed and Darius Cole had arrived separately, exactly 3 minutes apart, and neither man acknowledged the other until they reached the same weathered bench facing the west parking lot. To anyone watching, they looked like two friends, meeting for a quiet conversation. That appearance was deliberate. Marcus wore a charcoal windbreaker, faded jeans, and running shoes. Darius had on a navy sweatshirt and a baseball cap pulled low enough to shade his eyes. Nothing about them suggested federal authority. Nothing about them was supposed to. Marcus sat first and leaned back as though he had nowhere else to be. Darius joined him moments later, placing a paper coffee cup beside his foot. "Blue sedan, north entrance," Darius said softly. Marcus did not turn his head. "I saw it." A few seconds passed. A mother pushed a stroller along the path in front of them. 2 college students tossed a football across the grass. Somewhere behind them, a dog barked twice. Marcus watched reflections in the glass of a parked sport utility vehicle instead of looking directly toward the lot. Darius watched the movement of people near the tennis courts. They had worked together long enough to understand that attention could be dangerous. The best surveillance was the kind nobody noticed. Camera over the maintenance shed, Darius murmured. Rotates every 12 seconds. Marcus gave the smallest nod. And the one by the west gate. Dead angle behind the oak. Marcus checked his watch without appearing to check the time. Their target was late. That bothered him. Victor Hale was known for being careful, but he was almost never careless with schedules. 6 months of work had led to this afternoon. 6 months of bank records, coded messages, quiet interviews, and names that kept appearing where they should not have appeared. Today was supposed to confirm whether Hale was meeting someone connected to a larger network. Marcus and Darius had one job: observe, document, and remain invisible. No confrontation, no badges, no unnecessary movement. If Hale sensed federal attention, the entire investigation could disappear before sunset. Darius lifted his coffee and pretended to drink. Man in the gray jacket has passed us twice. Marcus had noticed him too. Jogger. Wrong shoes. Marcus almost smiled. Darius rarely missed details. Keep watching. Another minute passed. Then Marcus saw a patrol car moving slowly along the park. Road. White body. Blue stripe. City seal on the door. It rolled past once, continued toward the fountain, then circled back. Marcus felt the first small shift in the afternoon. Not fear. Awareness. The same instinct that had kept him alive through years of federal work. The patrol car slowed again. This time, the driver looked directly at the bench. Darius lowered his coffee. We have company. Marcus kept his eyes on the parking lot. Ignore it. The cruiser stopped about 30 yards away. The driver's door opened. Officer Ryan Keller stepped out and stood beside the vehicle for a moment, studying them. Marcus could feel the stare without meeting it. There had been no disturbance. No argument. No complaint that either man knew about. They were simply sitting in a public park. Still, Keller closed the distance with the confidence of someone who had already decided he needed answers. Marcus watched his reflection approaching in the dark screen of his phone. 20 yards. 15. 10. Darius whispered. Target could arrive any minute. Marcus slipped the phone into his jacket pocket. Then we stay invisible. Keller stopped directly in front of them. His shadow crossed the bench. Afternoon, he said. The words sounded polite. His expression did not. Marcus looked up. Afternoon, officer. Keller glanced between them, then toward the parking lot, then back again. You gentlemen been here long? Marcus knew immediately that this was not casual conversation. Darius knew it too. The operation had just acquired a problem that had nothing to do with Victor Hale. Long enough, Marcus said, keeping his tone neutral. Officer Ryan Keller shifted his weight and looked past him toward Darius, then back again, as if the answer had confirmed something he already believed. Doing what? He asked. Darius rested his forearms on his knees. Sitting in a park. Keller did not smile. I can see that. His eyes moved to the coffee cup near Darius's shoe, then to Marcus's jacket pocket, then toward the west parking lot. He was searching for meaning in ordinary things. Marcus recognized the pattern immediately. It was not an investigation yet. It was instinct looking for evidence. After the conclusion had already been made. We got a call about suspicious activity in this area, Keller said. Marcus glanced around at the families, the joggers, the tennis courts, the wide open lawn. What kind of suspicious activity? Keller's expression hardened slightly. I asked the questions. There it was. The first small turn. Marcus felt Darius notice it too. Neither man reacted. They had spent years learning when silence was more useful than argument. Keller pointed toward them. Identification. Marcus looked at him calmly. Are we being detained? Keller took half a step closer. I said identification. Marcus did not move. And I asked whether we are being detained. The park continued around them as if the moment had not changed, but it had. A man walking a golden retriever slowed near the path. A woman pushing a stroller glanced over her shoulder. 2 teenagers near the basketball court stopped talking. Keller noticed the attention and seemed to stand a little straighter. You got a problem cooperating with police? He asked. Marcus held his gaze. No, officer. I have a problem not knowing why you are asking. Keller looked at Darius. What about you? Darius answered without hesitation. Same question. The silence that followed was brief, but heavy. Keller's radio cracked softly against his shoulder. Somewhere behind the bench, a baseball hit a metal fence with a sharp clang. Marcus's phone remained quiet in his pocket, but his attention was divided. The west parking lot was still the priority. Every second spent here increased the chance that Victor Hale would arrive, notice the patrol car, and disappear. Marcus needed Keller gone. He also needed to keep the operation intact. "Officer," Marcus said, lowering his voice, "if someone reported a crime, tell us what it was. If not, we would like to continue our afternoon." Keller stared at him for a moment. "Stand up." Darius turned his head slightly. Marcus did not. "For what purpose?" "Because I told you to." That answer changed something. Not outwardly. Marcus remained calm. But inside, every instinct sharpened. Keller was no longer gathering information. He was testing obedience. Darius looked toward the north entrance without moving his head much. Marcus caught the signal. A vehicle had entered the park. Not the silver sport utility vehicle yet. A black sedan. Too early to know if it mattered. Keller noticed Darius's glance. "What are you looking at?" "Traffic," Darius said. "You expecting someone?" "Are you?" Darius replied. Keller's jaw tightened. Marcus immediately stepped in. "Darius." Just his name. Nothing more. The message was clear. "Do not feed this." Keller focused on Marcus again. "Both of you stand up." This time, Marcus rose slowly. Darius followed. They stood about 5 feet from the bench, hands visible, posture relaxed. Keller looked almost satisfied, as though standing had proved his authority. "Now, identification." Marcus reached toward his back pocket slowly. "I am going to get my wallet." Keller watched every movement. Marcus removed a plain leather wallet and held it in his hand without opening it. One federal credential could end the encounter instantly. One flash of a badge could also destroy 6 months of work. Marcus felt the weight of that choice. Darius saw it on his face. Keller did not. "Open it," Keller said. Marcus looked past him for the briefest moment. At the far entrance, a silver sport utility vehicle had just appeared. Darius's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "Marcus." Marcus saw it too. Victor Hale was here. Marcus did not open the wallet. His eyes stayed on the silver sport utility vehicle rolling slowly toward the west parking lot, then stopping beneath the shade of an oak tree less than 200 feet away. Victor Hale was behind the wheel. 6 months of patient work had just arrived within sight, and Officer Ryan Keller was standing between Marcus and the most important moment of the investigation. "Open it," Keller repeated. Marcus looked back at him. "Officer, I am asking you one more time. What crime do you believe we committed?" Keller exhaled through his nose. "I have 2 men sitting here for nearly an hour, watching cars, checking entrances, and acting evasive when I ask basic questions." Darius glanced toward Marcus. Keller had accidentally described surveillance with uncomfortable accuracy, but not for the reason he imagined. Marcus kept his voice steady. "Watching traffic is not a crime." Keller tilted his head. "Maybe not. But people around here are concerned." Marcus looked across the park. Children were still playing. A man was throwing a tennis ball for his dog. A woman sat beneath a maple tree reading a paperback. Nothing about the afternoon suggested danger except the story Keller had already constructed in his mind. What did the caller actually report? Marcus asked. Keller paused. 2 suspicious men. Darius finally looked directly at him. Suspicious how? Keller did not answer immediately. That silence said more than any explanation could have. Marcus had heard versions of it before, in complaints, interviews, internal reports, stories people told only after someone finally listened. 2 black men. Public space. Someone uncomfortable. Suspicion created first. Justification searched for afterward. Keller pointed at Marcus's wallet. Open it. At the edge of Marcus's vision, the driver door of the silver vehicle opened. Victor Hale stepped out wearing a light gray sport coat and carrying a folded newspaper. Darius saw him too. Neither agent turned. Their training took over. Breathe normally. Keep posture loose. Do not stare at the target. Hale crossed toward the path leading behind the tennis courts. Another man appeared near the maintenance building. Their meeting was beginning. Darius lowered his voice. We are losing the window. Keller heard him. What window? Marcus answered quickly. Nothing that concerns you. That was the wrong sentence for a man already determined to find something. Keller's expression changed. Now it concerns me. He stepped closer to the bench and looked at the paper coffee cup, the phones, and the ordinary jackets as though each might suddenly reveal the crime he expected to find. Empty your pockets. Marcus felt the operation tightening around them. If they complied fully, Keller could see equipment he would not understand. If they showed credentials, Hale might notice the shift from across the park. If they argued, Keller could escalate the detention and destroy the meeting anyway. Every option carried a cost. Darius spoke carefully. Officer Keller, we have been respectful. We have answered your questions. We are asking you to let us continue what we were doing. Keller narrowed his eyes. And what exactly were you doing? Marcus looked toward him, his expression unreadable. Sitting on a bench. Keller gave a short, humorless laugh. Right. Behind him, Hale disappeared down the path with the man from the maintenance building. Marcus watched their reflections vanish in the dark window of a parked car. The opportunity was slipping away. Then his phone vibrated inside his jacket. Once. A pause. Twice. The secure signal meant the surveillance team had noticed the interference. Keller's eyes dropped immediately toward the sound. Give me the phone. Marcus did not move. No. It was the first direct refusal. Keller seemed almost surprised by how calmly Marcus said it. Excuse me. Marcus met his eyes. That phone contains information you are not authorized to access. Keller stared at him. Darius went completely still. Somewhere beyond the trees, Victor Hale was walking deeper into the park, unaware that the federal operation surrounding him was being threatened by a traffic officer who believed he had found two suspicious strangers. Keller extended his hand. Phone. Now. Marcus could feel the decision approaching. The line between protecting the investigation and revealing who they were had become impossibly thin. He looked at Darius. One glance was enough. Hold cover as long as possible. Marcus turned back to Keller. Call your supervisor. Keller shook his head. I do not need my supervisor. Marcus's voice became quieter. You are going to wish you had. Marcus held Keller's gaze and let the warning settle between them. For 1 second, neither man moved. Then Darius shifted his eyes toward the west path and saw Victor Hale disappear behind the maintenance building with the man in the gray jacket. 6 months of work were now moving out of sight. Marcus, Darius said quietly. Marcus understood the message. Their window was closing. Keller heard only the urgency. Who are you talking to? He demanded. My partner, Darius replied. Partner in what? Keller asked. Marcus felt the irony of the question but gave nothing away. Across the park, the afternoon still looked peaceful. A family spread a blanket beneath an oak tree. A little boy chased a red ball across the grass. A cyclist passed within 20 feet of the bench without realizing that a federal operation was unfolding beside him. Marcus had spent years learning how to disappear inside scenes exactly like this. Blend in. Observe. Never become the most interesting person in the room. Today, simply sitting quietly had somehow made him interesting enough. Keller extended his hand again. Give me the phone. Marcus shook his head once. I cannot do that. Cannot or will not. Cannot. That answer made Keller pause. Not because he believed Marcus, but because something in the way he said it carried a certainty that did not fit the story Keller had constructed. Darius saw the hesitation and tried once more. Officer, there is still time for you to call a supervisor, verify what you need to verify, and let this end professionally. Keller looked at him. You keep talking like you are in charge. Darius answered calmly. No, I am talking like someone who knows this situation does not need to become more complicated. Keller gave a short laugh, but Marcus noticed the uncertainty underneath it. His phone vibrated again. 1 pulse. Then 2. Secure signal. The surveillance team was asking for status. Marcus could not answer without exposing the operation. He could not ignore it much longer either. Then Darius spotted movement through the trees. Hale had stopped near the maintenance building. The second man handed him something small, wrapped in a folded envelope. This was it. The exchange they had been waiting for. Darius lowered his voice until only Marcus could hear. Contact confirmed. Marcus kept his face still. Stay with me. Keller stepped closer. What did he just say? Nothing relevant to you, Marcus replied. Keller's patience finally seemed to run out. Hands where I can see them. Both of you. Marcus and Darius complied immediately. The people nearby were watching openly now. A woman near the fountain had her phone raised. An older man stood beside his dog, staring with a concerned expression. Imagine knowing that every second matters, that the man you have tracked for half a year is less than 200 feet away, and that revealing the truth could destroy everything you came to protect. Marcus could end the misunderstanding in seconds. He could open his wallet, show the federal credentials, and watch Keller's entire posture change. But Victor Hale was still close enough to see uniforms gather, hear raised voices, notice a sudden shift in behavior. One exposed badge could send him underground for months. Keller reached toward his handcuffs. "Since you two refuse to cooperate, I am going to detain you while I figure out what is going on." Darius looked at Marcus. It was the decision they had hoped they would never have to make. Marcus gave the smallest nod. "Do not break cover." Keller seemed surprised by their lack of resistance. "Turn around." Marcus did. So did Darius. The metal cuffs closed around Marcus's wrists with a quiet click that seemed strangely loud against the calm afternoon. Darius was next. Neither man protested. Neither raised his voice. Keller mistook their discipline for surrender. In reality, they were protecting an operation larger than his assumptions. Marcus looked toward the dark reflection in a parked car and saw Hale leaving the maintenance path. Then his phone vibrated for the third time inside his jacket. Keller noticed. "I am checking that phone now." Marcus turned his head slightly. His voice remained controlled, but something had changed in it. "Do not touch that device." Keller reached toward the pocket anyway. Darius closed his eyes for half a second. The line had finally been crossed. Marcus looked straight at Keller and said, "Officer, whatever you think is happening here, you are about to make it much bigger." Officer Ryan Keller kept his eyes on Marcus as though the warning itself were proof of wrongdoing. "You do not get to tell me what I can touch during a detention," he said, reaching toward the jacket pocket. Marcus did not pull away. He did not raise his voice. He simply turned his head enough to look directly at Keller and said, "Then document that decision." Carefully. Something in the sentence made Keller hesitate for half a second, but pride moved faster than caution. He removed the phone from Marcus's pocket and stared at the dark screen. No ordinary notifications. No social media previews. No familiar lock screen. Just a secure interface waiting behind encrypted access. "What is this?" Keller asked. Marcus answered, "A device you are not authorized to search." Darius stood a few feet away, wrists secured, watching the west path. Victor Hale was moving again, this time toward the lower parking lot where another vehicle had just arrived. The operation was not over, but it was changing by the second. "We need to move," Darius said quietly. Keller turned toward him. "Nobody is moving anywhere." Darius looked back at Marcus. The frustration in his eyes lasted less than a second before discipline covered it. Marcus understood exactly what he was thinking. If Hale completed the handoff and left, the surveillance team might still recover the evidence. If Keller discovered their identities now, Hale could notice the federal response and disappear. The mission was hanging between those two possibilities. Keller pressed the side button on the phone. The display came alive. An incoming call appeared across the screen. The contact label was simple. "Control." Keller frowned. "Who is Control?" Marcus said nothing. The call stopped. 3 seconds later, it came again. Keller stared at the screen, then at Marcus. "You want to explain this?" "No." Keller almost laughed. "You are making this very difficult for yourself." Marcus looked at him with a calm expression that no longer felt passive. "You are confusing silence with fear." The sentence landed differently. A few people nearby had moved closer, though they kept a respectful distance. The woman recording near the fountain lowered her phone for a moment, clearly trying to understand why neither detained man seemed nervous. The older man with the dog looked from Keller to Marcus with growing uncertainty. Even Keller seemed to notice the contrast. Most people he detained wanted to explain themselves immediately. Marcus and Darius seemed focused on something else entirely. Then, Keller spotted a small black case, partly visible beneath the bench. "What is that?" Darius answered before Marcus could. "Leave it there." Keller looked at him. "You really do not understand how this works, do you?" Darius held his gaze. "I understand exactly how this works." Keller crouched beside the bench and reached toward the case. Marcus spoke more firmly. "Officer Keller, stop." This time there was no ambiguity in his voice. Not anger. Authority. Keller froze for a moment. "You know my name?" he asked. Marcus realized the mistake instantly. Keller had introduced himself earlier, but suspicion had already taken control of his thinking. "You told us your name." Keller stood slowly. "Right." Yet the doubt remained. His radio crackled with a routine dispatch update. Behind him, near the west entrance, A dark sport utility vehicle turned into the park. Marcus saw it first. Then Darius. Their support team. Too soon. Someone at command had decided the disruption was threatening the operation badly enough to intervene. Darius exhaled softly. They are coming in. Keller followed his eyes. Who is coming in? Marcus did not answer. The dark vehicle stopped near the curb. Then a second one appeared behind it. Keller's posture changed. Not much, but enough. The afternoon suddenly felt smaller. Controlled. Focused. The first vehicle door opened. A woman in a dark blazer stepped out and began walking toward them with measured purpose. Keller raised one hand. Stay where you are. She did not stop. Marcus closed his eyes for the briefest moment. Cover was finished. The mission had just entered a new phase. Keller looked from the approaching woman to the encrypted phone in his hand, then back to Marcus. Who are these people? Marcus met his eyes and answered quietly. The ones I told you to call before you made this bigger. The woman in the dark blazer kept walking. She did not hurry. She did not shout. She moved with the calm confidence of someone who already understood exactly what she was looking at. Officer Ryan Keller raised his hand again. Ma'am, stop right there. She stopped about 10 feet away, looked first at Marcus, then at Darius, then at the handcuffs around their wrists. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. Officer, she said, remove those cuffs. Keller blinked. Excuse me. Remove them. Her voice remained even, but there was no uncertainty in it. The park had gone strangely quiet around them. The woman near the fountain was still recording. The older man with the dog had not moved. Even the children near the ball field seemed farther away now, their voices softened by the tension hanging over the bench. Keller looked toward the two dark sport utility vehicles at the curb. 3 more people had stepped out, all dressed casually, all watching him. Who exactly are you? He asked. The woman reached inside her blazer slowly and produced a leather credential case. She opened it where Keller could see. His eyes dropped to the identification. Then they stopped moving. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent in charge Rebecca Lawson. Keller looked at her face, then back at the credentials, as if reading them a second time might somehow produce a different answer. Rebecca closed the case. Now take the cuffs off my agents. The words landed with absolute clarity. Keller turned toward Marcus. Then Darius. For the first time since approaching the bench, he looked at them without the certainty he had carried before. Marcus said nothing. Darius said nothing. They did not need to. Keller's hand moved toward the key on his belt. Agents, he repeated quietly. Rebecca's eyes hardened. Yes, agents. And you are currently interfering with an active federal investigation. The confidence drained from Keller's posture. I had a report of suspicious activity. Rebecca glanced toward the bench. What activity? Keller hesitated. They had been sitting here, watching the parking lot. They would not explain what they were doing. Darius finally spoke. Because we were not authorized to explain it to you. Keller unlocked Marcus's cuffs first, then Darius's. The small clicks sounded louder than they should have. Marcus rubbed one wrist briefly, then immediately looked toward the west path. Status. Rebecca answered without taking her eyes off Keller. Hale completed the exchange. Surveillance team maintained. Visual contact. We still have him. Marcus exhaled. For the first time all afternoon, some of the tension left his shoulders. The operation had survived. Barely. Keller looked between them. Hale. Rebecca ignored the question. Marcus reached for the encrypted phone still in Keller's hand. Keller gave it back without argument. Marcus checked the screen. Several missed secure calls. One operational alert. One message confirming that Victor Hale was now under continued surveillance. Darius stepped closer to Rebecca. Did he see the vehicles come in? We do not think so. He exited through the south trail before the team approached. Marcus nodded. That was the first piece of good news they had received in nearly half an hour. Keller tried again. Look, if I had known who they were, this would have gone differently. Marcus slowly turned toward him. The sentence seemed to make the air colder. That is the problem, he said. Keller stared back. Marcus continued, his voice calm. It should not have required knowing who we were. No one spoke. Rebecca watched Keller carefully. Darius looked toward the bench where their coffee cup still sat untouched. Keller opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Marcus stepped closer, not threatening, not angry, simply steady. You had 2 men sitting in a public park. No crime. No victim. No evidence. But you decided we needed to prove we belonged here. Keller looked toward the ground for the first time. Rebecca's radio sounded softly. Another update came through. Victor Hale was still being followed. The operation was moving forward. But something else had changed too. Rebecca looked at Keller and said, "Your supervisor is on the way. So is Internal Affairs." Keller looked up quickly. "Internal Affairs?" Rebecca gave a single nod. "Your encounter was recorded. By your body camera, by witnesses, and by federal surveillance." The words seemed to settle over him one by one. Marcus glanced at the bench, then at Keller. The officer had spent the entire afternoon believing he was the only person asking questions. Now the questions were about to turn toward him. Internal Affairs arrived before Keller found another explanation. Lieutenant Daniel Mercer, Keller's supervisor, came with them, his expression unreadable as Rebecca Lawson summarized the encounter in precise, unemotional terms. Keller tried to speak twice, but each time Mercer raised a hand and told him to wait until the review began. Marcus and Darius stood several feet away near the bench, no longer detained, yet neither looked satisfied. For Marcus, the federal operation still mattered more than the humiliation of the last half hour. Victor Hale remained under surveillance, and the exchange near the maintenance building had been captured from two separate angles. The mission had survived. But now another question had opened, one Marcus had not expected to ask that afternoon. Why had Keller reacted so quickly, and was this really the first time? Rebecca seemed to be thinking the same thing. She stepped toward Marcus and lowered her voice. "There is something you need to know." Marcus looked at her. "What?" Keller's name came up before. Darius turned immediately. Rebecca continued. "Not as a target. As a peripheral name in one of the Hale files. A traffic stop from 8 months ago. Hale's associate was pulled over, then released without a citation." Keller signed the report. Marcus stared at her. The park noise seemed to fade behind the information. Why was that not flagged? At the time, there was nothing enough to connect it. Darius looked toward Keller, who was standing beside Mercer answering questions. Maybe there is now. Marcus did not jump to conclusions. Years of investigations had trained that impulse out of him. Coincidence was not guilt. Poor judgment was not conspiracy. But patterns mattered. "Pull his stop history," Marcus said. "Complaints too." Rebecca nodded. "Already happening." The first results arrived faster than anyone expected. Keller had accumulated several complaints over the previous 3 years involving stops that began with vague descriptions, unclear suspicion, or claims that people seemed out of place. Most had ended without discipline because evidence was limited or accounts conflicted. Today was different. Today there was body camera footage, witness video, federal surveillance, audio, timestamps, everything. Darius read the preliminary summary on Rebecca's phone and shook his head. "Same language," he said. Marcus looked over. Several reports used similar phrases. Suspicious behavior. Did not belong in the area. Refused to cooperate immediately. No crime established. No arrest sustained. Marcus felt something heavier than anger. Recognition. Keller had not invented his behavior today. He had practiced it. Mercer approached them several minutes later. "Agent Reed, Agent Cole, I want you to know this is being taken seriously." Marcus looked at him. It should have been serious before today. Mercer nodded slowly. He had no defense for that. Across the path, Keller stood alone now, while an internal affairs investigator reviewed his body camera recording. For the first time, he was not controlling the questions. He was answering them. But the second revelation had not finished unfolding. Rebecca received another secure message and read it twice. "Marcus." Something in her tone changed. She handed him the phone. A database cross-check had found 3 separate occasions when vehicles connected to Victor Hale's network had been stopped by Keller during the previous 18 months. Every driver had been released. 2 stops were never entered fully into the department system. Darius leaned closer. "That is not proof." Marcus nodded. "No, but it is a reason to ask better questions." He looked across the park at Keller. Less than an hour earlier, Keller had looked at 2 black men on a bench and decided suspicion came first and evidence could come later. Marcus would not make the same mistake now. "We investigate it clean," he said. "Every report, every recording, every contact. No assumptions." Rebecca gave a small nod. "Exactly." Marcus turned toward the bench, the same ordinary piece of wood where the entire afternoon had started. Justice, he knew, could not become prejudice wearing a different uniform. Keller deserved scrutiny based on evidence, not revenge based on anger. And if the evidence led somewhere darker, then Keller would finally face the standard he had failed to give others. Facts first, judgment second. 3 weeks later, Jefferson Park looked exactly the same, and somehow that was what struck Marcus most. The same oak trees cast long shadows across the walking path. The same food cart stood near the fountain. The same wooden bench faced the west parking lot as if nothing important had ever happened there. Marcus arrived first this time, carrying a plain paper cup of coffee. He sat down and watched a father help his young son untangle the string of a bright red kite. A few minutes later, Darius approached from the north path and dropped onto the bench beside him. "You really came back," Darius said. Marcus looked ahead. "I wanted to see if the bench had learned anything." Darius smiled faintly. "Any signs of personal growth?" Still wooden. For a moment, they simply sat there. No surveillance assignment. No concealed operation. No target moving through the parking lot. Just two black men sitting in a public park on an ordinary American afternoon. That simplicity felt different now. The investigation into Victor Hale had expanded after the exchange they witnessed. Federal agents traced financial records, communications, and several contacts connected to his network. Officer Ryan Keller had not been declared guilty because of suspicion, and Marcus had insisted that nobody treat him that way. The evidence had been reviewed piece by piece. His body camera footage was examined. His previous stops were reopened. His reports were compared with dispatch records. His unexplained contacts with vehicles linked to Hale were investigated. Some questions led nowhere. Others did not. Investigators found that Keller had repeatedly failed to document certain encounters correctly, including 2 involving people connected to Hale's organization. Whether those decisions were corruption, favoritism, or serious misconduct remained subject to formal proceedings, but the pattern was enough for the department to suspend him while the investigation continued. Just as important, the review of his previous encounters revealed something no one could dismiss anymore. Several citizens had described almost the same experience Marcus and Darius had lived through that afternoon. They had been questioned without clear cause, asked to prove why they belonged somewhere, treated as suspicious before any crime had been established. Most had never possessed a federal credential that could instantly change the way an officer looked at them. Marcus thought about that more than he thought about Keller. Darius took a sip of coffee. Lawson said the department approved the new review policy. Marcus nodded. Supervisors would now examine certain field contacts more closely, especially encounters based on vague descriptions or claims that someone appeared out of place. It was not a dramatic punishment. It would never become a headline as easily as anger did. But Marcus understood something people often forgot about justice. Sometimes the most important consequences were quiet. A change policy, a reopened complaint, a supervisor asking one more question, an officer learning that authority did not erase accountability. Across the grass, the red kite finally lifted into the air. The little boy laughed and ran while his father followed behind him. Darius watched them for a moment. "Still hate this place?" he asked. Marcus shook his head. "No. The bench." Marcus looked down at the weathered wood beneath them. It was never the bench. Darius understood. The bench had not judged them. The park had not judged them. The problem had been the story someone decided to believe before knowing the facts. Marcus leaned back and watched people move through the afternoon sunlight. He remembered Keller saying that things would have gone differently if he had known they were federal agents. That sentence had stayed with him because it revealed the entire problem in a few words. Respect should not depend on discovering that the person in front of you has power. Dignity should not require credentials. Fairness should not arrive only after someone important enters the scene. Marcus looked toward the west parking lot where Hale had appeared that day, then toward the path where Rebecca Lawson had walked toward them. "You know what bothers me most?" he said. Darius waited. Marcus continued. "He thought the mistake was not knowing who we were." Darius nodded slowly. "But the mistake happened before that." Marcus watched the kite climb higher against the blue Virginia sky. Exactly. That afternoon, Keller had believed his badge gave him the right to decide who belonged. In the end, the badge did something else. It made his choices visible. He had looked at 2 black men on a park bench and seen suspicion before humanity, but by sunset, the men he questioned were back at work, and he was the one being asked to explain himself.